Nia Carter was a woman whose life was measured in receipts and balance sheets. At 24, her only goal was to survive accounting school with her integrity intact, and maybe, if fortune smiled, graduate before her mother's kidneys gave out. But on a rain-soaked November night at the end of her third double shift that week, she found a watch. Not just any watch, a rose gold masterpiece worth more than she'd earn in 2 years. The owner was Vincent Moretti, a man whose name appeared in federal investigations more often than society pages. What Nia didn't know as she photographed that engraving with trembling hands was that she hadn't stumbled onto a forgotten item. She had walked directly into a calculated, high-stakes test. Returning the watch was the moral choice, the right choice, but it was also the first irreversible step into a world commanded by a man who only valued those he could bind. Nia Carter was an anchor in a storm she couldn't control. At 24, she balanced the polished trays of Rosewood Bistro, an upscale downtown Chicago establishment that catered to the city's elite with the merciless demands of her advanced accounting courses at the University of Chicago. She was precise, disciplined, and understood the cruel mathematics of survival. Every dollar earned, every debt owed, every choice a line item in the ledger of her life. Her natural hair was twisted into an elegant, practical bun, secured with the same bobby pins her grandmother had used. Around her neck hung a delicate gold cross, her only inheritance, catching light even in the bistro's carefully orchestrated low glow. She was fueled by a singular, uncompromising vision: CPA certification, a legitimate career where numbers made sense and paychecks cleared, a life where her mother received dialysis without choosing between treatment and rent. That dream was her fixed point in a rotating world of chaos. But the journey to it was an exhausting marathon through minimum wage, maximum tuition, and mounting medical bills. It was 11:37 p.m., and the dining room was finally cathedral quiet. Nia wiped down the last booth, her reflection ghosting across rain-streaked floor-to-ceiling windows. Her mind was already racing through the revenue recognition principles she needed to master before her 7 a.m. midterm. Her feet ached, a deep, bone-level complaint against polished marble floors designed for beauty, not comfort. She glanced toward booth 7, tucked discreetly in the corner, where her final patron had spent the entire evening. He had been a study in contained power. Silver-haired, perhaps late 50s, dressed in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that whispered old money and deliberate choices. His features were sharp, aristocratic, a face carved by discipline rather than genetics. His eyes were what unsettled her most. They didn't observe, they assessed. Every glance was an audit. He had ordered a single black coffee, left it half-finished, paid with a crisp $200 bill on a $12 tab without asking for change, and departed in silence. His presence hadn't filled the room, it had commanded it, leaving a vacuum of stillness in his wake. As Nia cleared the table, sweeping crumbs from the leather banquette, her hand brushed against something cold and solid wedged between the cushion and the booth wall. She pulled it free, a watch case, midnight blue leather embossed with gold lettering she didn't recognize. The weight alone told her this was no ordinary timepiece. A wave of profound unease rolled through her. She slid into the booth and opened the case with the careful reverence one might use handling evidence. Inside lay a Patek Philippe Nautilus. Even her limited knowledge recognized the signature integrated bracelet, the moon phase complication dial, the rose gold gleam that seemed to hold its own light source. The craftsmanship was museum quality. This wasn't jewelry, it was legacy. Then she saw the engraving inside the case, and her breath caught. V.M. Loyalty is the only currency. Her pulse hammered against her throat. She pulled out her phone, screen cracked, 3 months overdue for replacement, and searched the initials with shaking fingers. The results chilled her blood. Vincent Moretti. Alleged organized crime figure. Federal racketeering investigations spanning 2 decades. No convictions. The Chicago Tribune had dubbed him the Accountant, a man who controlled a restaurant and real estate empire that served as the pristine facade for operations no journalist could prove, but everyone suspected. The temptation arrived like a physical presence in the empty bistro. She pulled up a watch for him. Similar Patek Philippe models sold for $75,000 to $85,000. $80,000. That number detonated in her mind like a depth charge. That was her entire student debt, $47,000 paid in full. That was her mother's dialysis bills for 2 years. That was the eviction notice taped to her. Apartment door transformed into 12 months of breathing room. That was dignity, security, time. She could walk 6 blocks to a pawn shop she'd passed 100 times. No questions asked. Cash by morning. A fresh start by afternoon. But her grandmother's voice, the woman who'd raised her in a cramped South Side apartment with more love than money, echoed like a benediction. Nia, baby, what you do in the dark shows who you are in the light. Your character is the only thing no one can ever take from you. Protect it like your life depends on it because your soul does. Nia stared at the watch, rose gold glowing against blue velvet, the engraving burning into her vision. Loyalty is the only currency. She thought of her mother's swollen hands, the eviction notice, the textbooks she'd bought used and resold at a loss, the bus rides at 2 a.m., through neighborhoods where streetlights died young. She thought of her grandmother's gold cross around her neck. She thought of who she wanted to be when she finally looked in the mirror without flinching. Her hands were still trembling when she pulled out her phone and dialed the number listed for VM Consulting. The choice was already made, but she didn't yet understand the price. The number glowed on her cracked screen. VM Consulting, a generic name concealing something ancient and dangerous. Nia's thumb hovered over the call button. She refreshed the search results one more time, scrolling through headlines that made her blood run cold. Federal investigation stalls after key witness disappears. Moretti's restaurant empire. Money laundering front. The accountant. How one man controls Chicago's underground economy. Every article ended the same way. Allegations, investigations, no convictions. Witnesses who vanished. Evidence that disappeared. A man who operated in plain sight while remaining untouchable. His legitimate businesses too pristine to penetrate, his reputation too terrifying to challenge. Her rational mind screamed the obvious truth. This is dangerous. Walk away. Drop the watch in a river. Mail it anonymously. Pawn it and disappear. Anything but calling him directly. But her grandmother's voice, soft and immovable as a gospel hymn, resonated through her bones. Your integrity is the architecture of your soul, baby girl. Compromise it once, and you'll spend your whole life shoring up the cracks. Nia stood abruptly, pacing the empty bistro with the watch case clutched against her chest. Rain hammered the windows in waves, distorting the streetlights outside into abstract watercolors. The espresso machine ticked as it cooled. Her reflection moved like a ghost across glass, a woman at a crossroads she'd never asked to reach. The watch could solve everything. One pawn shop, one transaction, one moral compromise measured against her mother's life, her education, her future. But she'd watched her grandmother die 6 months ago in a county hospital room that smelled of industrial disinfectant and unfulfilled prayers. Kidney failure, same disease slowly killing her mother now. In those final hours, her grandmother's grip had been surprisingly strong, pulling Nia close enough to smell the lavender oil she'd worn since 1963. Nia, baby, listen to me. I'm about to meet my maker, and I can do that with peace because I know who I am. When your time comes, and baby, it comes for all of us, you'll want that same peace. Don't trade it for anything. Not money, not comfort, not survival itself. Your character is the only thing that crosses over with you. Nia had promised, had worn the gold cross as a covenant. Now that covenant had an $80,000 price tag. She stopped pacing at 11:52 p.m. Her hands steadied. The choice crystallized with the cold clarity of a final exam she'd over-prepared for. There was only one answer she could live with. She dialed. The phone rang once, twice. On the third ring, a voice answered marble and smoke. Authority without volume. Speak. Nia's throat tightened. Mr. Moretti? I work at Rosewood Bistro. You left something? Silence. Not empty silence, but the weighted kind. Tectonic and evaluating, where she could feel herself being measured across the invisible distance. Describe it. A watch. Rose gold. Patek Philippe. There's an engraving inside. Another pause, infinite and assessing, where Nia's entire future seemed suspended in the space between heartbeats. You will stay precisely where you are. A car will arrive in 11 minutes. The line went dead. Nia stood frozen in the center of the empty bistro, phone still pressed to her ear, rain streaming down windows like the city itself was weeping. She'd done the right thing, she was certain of that. What she wasn't certain of was whether the right thing would save her or damn her. She walked to booth 7 and sat down, watching rain distort the streetlights, knowing with absolute clarity that she'd just crossed an invisible threshold. 11 minutes, until she discovered what waited on the other side. The Mercedes S-Class arrived at precisely 12:03 a.m., as promised, black, gleaming despite the rain, windows tinted to opacity. The driver emerged in a dark suit that matched the vehicle's severity, opened the rear door without speaking, and waited with the patience of a man accustomed to unquestioning obedience. Nia locked the bistro, watch case clutched in both hands, and slid into leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The door closed with the hermetic seal of a vault. No music played, no small talk offered, just silence and the whisper of rain against bulletproof glass. They drove through Chicago's transformation from her working-class neighborhood where corner stores had bars on windows and streetlights flickered uncertainly, through the gradual gentrification of mid-tier districts, finally entering the pristine realm of the city's elite. Here, buildings gleamed like monuments to capital itself, and even the rain seemed cleaner. The car stopped at Moretti's flagship restaurant Lombardi's, a name that appeared in Chicago Magazine's Power Dining features with reverent frequency. Closed now, but a single light glowed from inside like a liturgical candle. The driver opened her door, gestured toward the entrance where another dark-suited figure waited to escort her inside. Through the darkened dining room, white tablecloths ghostly in the dimness, wine glasses catching ambient light like stars to a private room in the back. One table, spotlit with theatrical precision, and there, waiting with the stillness of a Renaissance portrait, sat Vincent Moretti. In his element, he was transformed. The silver hair that had seemed distinguished at the bistro now looked leonine, catching light like a crown. His eyes dark, bottomless, didn't just assess her. They performed a forensic audit of her soul. His presence commanded gravity itself, as if the room's axis had shifted to orbit him. "Sit," he said. Not an invitation, an inevitability. Nia sat across from him, placing the watch case on white linen between them. Her hands shook slightly. She clasped them in her lap. "You didn't open the case beyond reading the engraving," Moretti observed, his voice carrying the texture of aged whiskey and unsigned contracts. "Why?" "It wasn't mine to examine, sir. You researched me." "Not a question. You know what I'm alleged to be, what people say I control. Yet you came alone, at midnight, to return this." His head tilted fractionally, predator measuring prey. "Why?" Nia met his gaze, her grandmother's cross heavy against her sternum. "Because it's yours, and because I need to sleep at night knowing I did the right thing." Something flickered in Moretti's expression, amusement, perhaps, or recognition. He reached for the watch case, opened it with familiar reverence, examined the Patek Philippe as one might regard a cherished chess piece. Then his winter smile emerged, sharp as November. "Wind. I didn't forget this watch, Miss Carter. I left it." The words took a moment to register. When they did, heat flooded Nia's face, embarrassment crystallizing into anger. "You were testing me? This was what, some kind of sick game?" "Not a game, an assessment." Moretti's voice remained level, factual. "I needed to know what kind of woman finds $80,000 and tracks down a dangerous man to return it. I needed to understand your character, your decision-making under moral pressure, your capacity for integrity when no one's watching." He produced a plain manila envelope from his jacket, placed it beside the watch case. $10,000, cash, and a note. Nia didn't touch it. "I don't want your money. I just wanted to do what's right. The money isn't gratitude, Miss Carter." Moretti stood, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. "It's a down payment. You passed a test you didn't know you were taking. That has value, significant value." He nodded, toward the envelope. "The car will take you home. Keep your phone on." "For what?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. Further contact. Nia sat in the Mercedes again, envelope burning in her lap like radioactive material, watching Chicago blur past in streaks of neon and rain. She'd passed a test she never agreed to take, and won a prize she wasn't sure she wanted. The envelope felt heavier than the watch ever had. 3 days passed like a held breath. Nia tried to return to normalcy: lectures, flashcards, the mechanical rhythm of academic survival. She hadn't touched the $10,000, hadn't even opened the envelope beyond confirming its contents and reading the handwritten note. Preliminary assessment complete. Await further contact. Tuesday afternoon, 4:47 p.m. Harper Memorial Library. Autumn sunlight slanted through Gothic windows, illuminating suspended dust like gold leaf. Nia occupied her usual spot, 3rd floor, northeast corner, away from foot traffic, surrounded by textbooks and highlighted notes for Professor Chen's advanced financial accounting midterm. She was deep in consolidation theory when a presence materialized across from her. Vincent Moretti, immaculate in navy pinstripe, sat down as if they'd scheduled this meeting weeks ago. Before Nia could speak, he began. "Tuesdays and Thursdays, Professor Chen's advanced financial accounting, Harrison Hall, room 304. Wednesdays, you visit your mother at Street Catherine's Dialysis Center, 2 to 4 p.m. Your landlord, Mr. Kowalski, expects $1,400 by Friday or he files eviction paperwork. You told no one about our meeting. You researched me thoroughly, yet still called. Curiosity with caution rare. The blood drained from Nia's face. You've been watching me? I've been understanding you. Moretti folded his hands on the table, manicured, steady, the hands of a surgeon or executioner. You're brilliant, Miss Carter. Top 10% of your class despite working 60-hour weeks. You possess something most accountants lack. The ability to see patterns others miss, to understand that numbers tell stories, to recognize that every financial system has seams that can be exploited by those with sufficient intelligence. What do you want from me? Everything. The word hung between them like a contract clause. Full tuition at University of Chicago paid in full. CPA exam fees covered. Graduate degree funding at Booth School of Business. Your mother's medical expenses, indefinitely, at the premier nephrology center in the Midwest. Your student debt $47,000 erased by morning. Nia's heart hammered against her ribs. In exchange for, you become the financial architect for my restaurant and real estate holdings. You'll structure acquisitions, optimize tax strategies, manage offshore accounts, ensure every transaction is defensible under audit. You'll have access to systems most CPAs never encounter, solving puzzles that would bore you anywhere else. The unspoken truth crystallized with brutal clarity. You're asking me to launder money, to become a criminal. I'm offering you a future. Moretti's voice remained conversational, almost gentle. Your mother lives. You graduate debt-free. You gain expertise that transforms you from competent to indispensable. The only question is, what are your principles worth in dollars? I'm not for sale. Everyone's for sale, Miss Carter. The only variable is price. He withdrew a smartphone from his jacket, sleek, unmarked, clearly specialized, placed it on the table between them like a chess move. You pick up that phone, your old life ends. You leave it. I respect your choice and you never see me again. But understand that choice is permanent. I don't make offers twice. Nia stared at the device. It looked ordinary, innocuous. A portal to damnation disguised as technology. Her hands remained frozen in her lap. She thought of her mother's swollen ankles last Wednesday. The way she'd smiled through obvious pain and insisted she was fine. She thought of Mr. Kowalski's eviction notice, his apologetic expression that couldn't hide his own desperation. She thought of her $47,000 debt growing like cancer, interest compounding while she slept. She thought of her grandmother's voice. Your character is the only thing that crosses over with you. But her grandmother was dead, and her mother was dying, and character didn't pay for dialysis. Her fingers moved before her mind fully decided. They closed around the phone, cold and smooth and irreversible. If I do this, Nia heard herself say, voice steady despite the earthquake inside her. My name stays clean. My mother never knows. And I walk away when my debts are paid. Moretti's smile was wintry, knowing. Your name will be pristine. Your mother will believe you won scholarships and research grants. As for walking away, he stood, buttoning his jacket. We'll discuss terms when you've earned negotiating power. He walked away without another word, footsteps silent on marble floors. Nia sat alone in the cathedral light, encrypted phone in her hands, her reflection ghosting across the dark screen. She'd just sold her future to save her present. The phone felt heavier than any watch, any envelope, any choice she'd ever made. And somewhere in the gathering darkness outside those Gothic windows, Vincent Moretti was already making arrangements for the woman who'd just become his most valuable asset. 6 weeks transformed Nia's life into something she barely recognized. The executive suite above Lombardi's became her second home, soundproofed walls, triple monitor workstation, forensic accounting software she'd only read about in textbooks, blockchain terminals that tracked transactions across 17 countries, access to offshore accounts in jurisdictions most Americans couldn't locate on a map. This infrastructure hadn't been assembled for her arrival. It had been prepared, waiting like a custom-tailored suit for its inevitable occupant. Her official role, financial director, Moretti Hospitality Group. Her actual work, restructuring supply chains to maximize tax efficiency, identifying optimization opportunities in real estate portfolios, ensuring every transaction could survive federal scrutiny. She'd handled 3 restaurant acquisitions, 2 property developments, and countless consultations where Moretti's associates presented problems that required elegant solutions. Nothing explicitly illegal. Not yet. But the line between optimization and obfuscation grew thinner with each assignment. She told herself she was learning, building expertise, that she'd walk away once her debts were paid. The encrypted phone knew better. At 2:14 a.m. on a Thursday, the phone detonated her sleep with a sound like a flatline monitor. No caller ID, just text, secure location, 7, now, bring everything. Nia dressed in the dark, hands shaking with adrenaline and dread. She'd never been summoned at night, never seen Moretti outside controlled environments. The black Escalade arrived within minutes, driving in silence through sleeping suburbs to Lake Forest old money territory, where estates hid behind limestone walls and ancient trees. They stopped at a mansion that looked carved from Italian quarries, every window blazing with frantic light. Inside, chaos. The scene violated everything she'd learned about Moretti's operations. 8 men in shirt sleeves crowded around a conference table buried in ledgers, laptops, spreadsheets scattered like casualties, coffee cups everywhere, cigarette smoke despite expensive air filtration, and Moretti normally glacial, controlled, immaculate pacing with contained fury that made the air vibrate. He saw her, locked eyes. Federal subpoena. Dawn raids in 4 hours. They have transaction records from the Riverside account someone talked or got sloppy. If they connect the dots, RICO charges bury us all. His voice could have frozen blood. Find the breach. Sever it. Make the trail disappear. Terror screamed through Nia's nervous system. This was what she'd feared the moment when she crossed from gray area into felony territory. But something else emerged beneath the fear. Cold, surgical focus. The same clarity she felt solving impossible exam problems. Her voice cut through the chaos. Pull every Riverside transaction from the last 9 months. Cross-reference with legitimate restaurant supply orders. Timestamps, invoice numbers, delivery confirmations now. Moretti's enforcers, men who'd barely acknowledged her existence, became her assistants. They moved. For 97 minutes, Nia performed forensic dissection. 3 laptops open simultaneously, Excel sheets cascading with data. Her mind constructing 3-dimensional models of money flow, identifying patterns, hunting anomalies. There, a $340,000 discrepancy in shellfish invoices, real orders, inflated costs, the difference siphoned into a secondary account. Clumsy, amateur, exactly what federal algorithms were designed to detect. The account's in Marco's cousin's name. She didn't look up, fingers flying across keyboards. It's sloppily tied to 3 other entities. The feds will connect it to you by noon. Moretti's consigliere, a man named Sal with dead eyes, went rigid. That's not solutions, Moretti interrupted, voice lethal. Nia's mind raced through scenarios, probabilities, legal precedents, retroactively amend the supplier contracts, show disputed charges, initiate legal mediation with the vendor, classify the overcharges as billing errors under investigation. Simultaneously, the secondary account holder files bankruptcy, claims gambling debts, makes the funds look personal and chaotic, not organized. She finally looked up. The pattern breaks. The feds have noise, not signal. Silence. Every man in the room stared at her. Moretti's expression was unreadable. Execute it. The room exploded. Into coordinated motion. Lawyers called. Documents prepared. The cousin extracted from sleep and given a script. Bank accounts opened and closed. Legal paperwork backdated with precision. By 5:30 a.m., the trap was neutralized. The money trail fragmented into plausible incompetence. The federal case reduced to unprovable suspicions. First light bled into the compound like a wound healing. Moretti dismissed everyone with a gesture. Suddenly, terrifyingly, Nia was alone with the man whose empire she'd just saved, and whose crimes she was now irrevocably complicit in. Moretti stood at floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Shoulders slightly bowed, the first human posture Nia had ever witnessed from him. Dawn painted the water in shades of bronze and ash. You didn't just solve the problem. His voice was quiet, almost reflective. You understood the system's legal, federal, psychological, and weaponized the seams between them. In 97 minutes, you did what most in-past financial criminals can't accomplish in years. He turned, and something unfamiliar softened his features. Not warmth, but acknowledgement. Recognition. You're not an employee, Miss Carter. You're an asset. Indispensable. He produced a key card from his jacket. Gold Coast penthouse, 14th floor. Under a trust I control, but yours to occupy indefinitely. He placed it on the table like a poker chip. Your mother's dialysis has been transferred to Northwestern Memorial's concierge nephrology program. World-class care, no waiting lists, no copays, and your acceptance to Booth's graduate program is finalized. Full scholarship, naturally. Each gift landed like a golden shackle. And the phone? Nia asked, her voice barely audible. Stays on. Always. His smile was almost paternal, almost kind, which made it more terrifying. Your debts are paid, Nia, but you've accrued new ones. To me, to this family, we protect our own. The smile sharpened. We also own our own. Nia felt the weight of everything, the watch test, the library proposition, this dawn rescue, each a link in a chain she'd forged herself. Understood, she whispered. Moretti extended his hand. Nia stared at it for a moment that stretched like taffy, then grasped it. His grip was firm, binding, final. The pact was sealed. The penthouse was museum quiet, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, furniture that cost more than cars, marble surfaces that reflected her ghost. Nia showered, dressed in clothes she didn't remember packing, made coffee she couldn't taste. The encrypted phone sat on the kitchen island, silent, patient, inevitable as sunrise. Her reflection stared back from the windows. A woman with a funded future and a compromised soul. Outside, Chicago woke oblivious millions of people with normal problems, clean consciences, moral clarity. Her grandmother's voice echoed, "What you do in the dark shows who you are in the light." But the dark, Nia now understood, had its own rewards and its own prices. She thought of her mother receiving world-class care, smiling without pain for the first time in months. She thought of her debt balance at zero, her Booth acceptance letter, her future secured. She thought of the money trail she'd destroyed at dawn, the federal investigation she'd derailed, the line she'd crossed that could never be uncrossed. The phone sat waiting. She knew it would ring again, and she knew God help her she'd answer. Nia stood at the window, caught between sunrise and her reflection, free from financial chains but bound by invisible ones far stronger. Her journey had begun with a found watch and a moral choice. The test was complete. She'd passed. And that, she realized as morning light flooded the Gold Coast, was the tragedy.